Every Saturday, old friends Sam and Joe went for a 20-mile walk. It was 10 miles from Sam's home in Hartford, Connecticut to Talcott Tower and back. The same hours-long stroll each Saturday, year in and year out. Along the roadside, about 4 miles from the tower, there was a grove of hickory trees and colorful gentian. On the return trip, always on the return trip, Sam and Joe would gather some gentian blossoms. They would lie down in the hickory grove to enact another phase of the weekly ritual, which was their Saturday afternoon laugh. In the autumn it was particularly joyous. They would roll about on the golden carpet of fallen hickory leaves, bellowing hysterically until their sides were sore. And the inspiration for this profound and reliably recurrent hilarity, the inspiration is the rest of the story. Each and every Saturday, Sam and Joe brought with them on their outing the same reading material, the same slender volume, the dirtiest book in the whole wide world. When they would reach the hickory grove, one of the two friends would produce this prurient text from a pocket and begin reading aloud. And there in the seclusion of that secret place, both of them would laugh uproariously, uncontrollably, like small boys blowing off steam. The naughty, bawdy little book was entitled 1601. How bad was it? The author himself once had said, "If there is a decent or delicate word findable in it, it's because I overlooked it." The book was grade A, gross-out, unadulterated adultery, pure pornography. And what made it even dirtier and funnier to Sam and Joe was that Sam had written every word of it. Sam was the author of 1601. An unlikely fellow to have scrawled such graffiti, because Sam was generally considered a decent and a moral man, a family man. According to many who knew him, he was ordinarily hypersensitive to sex in print, was even more prudish than his own wife on that subject, and Joe, good heavens, Joe Twitchell was a minister. A well-known, widely respected man of the cloth. His congregation was comprised of businessmen and community pillars, sober, responsible citizens. One can only imagine the awed reactions should any one of them have seen their preacher rolling in the grass in the hickory grove, gasping for breath between laughter at Sam's obscenities, but nobody ever saw. Sam and Joe managed to keep their weekly porno reading a secret. As for the lascivious epic 1601, it never was published, unless you count the limited underground editions which have appeared occasionally. Vulgar beyond belief, crude beyond compare, it nevertheless served its purpose. It allowed two old friends, Sam its author and Joe for whom it was written. It permitted these two publicly revered gentlemen a private revelry, an escape, perhaps, from the prison of their own ponderous reputations, an unrestrained guffaw in a hickory grove beyond the range of any raised eyebrows. Now, I don't think I mentioned that Sam, the perverse mastermind behind the lascivious epic 1601, the man who wrote the world's dirtiest book, was also the gentle genius who spun a web of childhood enchantment in his Tales of the Mississippi River. For he was Sam Clemens. That's right, Mark Twain. And now you know the rest of the story.
Now, the rest of the story. We've all heard of Samuel Clemens's, Mark Twain's most famous works, such as his 1876 novel, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, his 1884 sequel, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and maybe his 1889 novel, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. Those three novels have been made into Hollywood films on numerous occasions. But most of us have never heard of the novel Mr. Harvey told us about, Conversation as it was by the social fireside in the time of the Tudors, more commonly referred to simply as 1601. Mark Twain did this on purpose. Now, wait a minute. A writer writing something he does not intend for the masses to read? Sounds counterproductive, doesn't it? Well, let me explain. You see, Mark Twain wrote 1601 for a highly respectable all-male writing group as an exercise in the style of French writer François Rabelais. Some of Rabelais' books were marked by gross, robust humor, extravagance of caricature, and bold naturalism. Rather than coming up with clever titles for his third and fourth books, Rabelais called them third book and fourth book. 1601 was first published in 1880. Only 4 copies were believed to have been printed. They are known as the Cleveland edition. Mark Twain published it anonymously to avoid the controversy that would certainly erupt if the reading public learned that he, Mark Twain, wrote it. In 1881, Mark Twain visited West Point, and there he learned of a man named Charles Wood who had access to a private printing press. Mark Twain had Charles Wood create a new edition of 50 copies, which are known as the West Point edition. Now, the Cleveland and West Point editions are so rare that I was unable to even find a photo of either book. The book included a humorous conversation between Queen Elizabeth and other famous people of the era. In one example, the narrator explained that someone had passed gas in the Queen's presence. He said, "In ye heat of ye talk, it befell yet one did break wind, yielding an exceeding mighty and distressful stink, whereat all did laugh full sore." The Queen asked about the source of the broken wind and foul odor. Lady Alice said, "Good your grace, and I had room for such a thunder gust within mine ancient bowels. 'Tis not in reason I could discharge ye same and live to thank God, for yet He did choose handmaid so humble whereby to shew His power. Nay, 'tis not I yet have brought forth this rich o'ermastering fog, this fragrant gloom, so pray you seek ye further." She meant, wasn't me, it was somebody else. Francis Bacon and William Shakespeare also denied having passed the gas, though they have different opinions about the merits of the flatulence. Francis Bacon considered it a great performance beyond his abilities. Shakespeare was astounded by its firmament-clogging rottenness. Walter Raleigh admitted to it, but confessed that it was not up to his usual standards. He then gave a demonstration of his usual abilities when he produced a louder and more potent one. The book covered many taboo topics, such as the growth of pubic hair, conversations about the testicles, sex, and even masturbation. Because of its subject matter, although written to be humorous, the book was unprintable by mainstream publishers. It was characterized as pornography. Mark Twain finally acknowledged that he'd written the book in 1906, more than 20 years after he had written it and just 4 years before his death. Underground copies of 1601 were published on a small scale by small private printers until the 1960s. You see, in the 1960s, humans were launched into space, orbited Earth, performed spacewalks, and walked on the moon. Back here on Earth, the 60s ushered in a shift in our perception of just about everything. The 60s are now referred to as the countercultural decade. What was accepted by society changed. There were changes in clothing, music, views on drug use, sexuality, formalities, civil rights, thoughts on military duty, and education. Remember the phrase, turn on, tune in, and drop out? Even pornography became somewhat socially acceptable. Books which had been banned or had failed to be published by mainstream printers, such as Mark Twain's 1601, became popular. But this was not Mark Twain's only battle with censorship. Remember that freedom of the press is a fundamental principle protected by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. But that doesn't mean printers have to print whatever an author writes, and that doesn't mean libraries have to add their books to their shelves. In February 1885, one of Mark Twain's most famous books, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, was printed and ready for public consumption. But within a month, libraries in Concord, Massachusetts banned the book. On March 18, 1885, Mark Twain wrote a letter to Charles Webster. Dear Charlie, the committee of the Public Library of Concord, Massachusetts have given us a rattling tip-top puff which will go into every paper in the country. They have expelled Huck from their library as trash and suitable only for the slums. That will see 25,000 copies for us, sure. As he predicted, the book was a bestseller. Now, Huckleberry Finn is about two runaways, one of which escapes an abusive father and the other which escapes slavery. It's largely considered one of Mark Twain's best novels and also one of the greatest American novels of all time. What was the problem then? Many people have argued that the book is racist because of the continual use of the N-word. Others thought Mark Twain was making fun of the way Southerners thought and spoke as if they were ignorant. Now, Mark Twain was originally from Missouri. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is always included on the top 100 banned or challenged books in America. Mark Twain's Adventures of Tom Sawyer is also on the list. Other books on the list include All the King's Men, The Diary of Anne Frank, Stephen King's Carrie and Christine, the books Catch-22, Catcher in the Rye, A Clockwork Orange, The Color Purple, For Whom the Bell Tolls, The Great Gatsby, Gone with the Wind, Harry Potter, and the Holy Bible. You heard me right, even the Bible is on the list. Should we ban books that we don't agree with? That's a very important question. And if so, who should that power be entrusted to? The President? Congress? Other elected officials? Who should have the right to tell us what we can read? There are books in every library in America which contain things that each of us would consider offensive. But they wouldn't be the same books because we all have different tastes. Sometimes we need to read books that offend us to keep us aware of the mistakes of the past. We need these books to be available to our children so they can be aware of what society deems as right and wrong. In rebuttal to censorship in general, Mark Twain quipped, "Censorship is telling a man he can't have a steak just because a baby can't chew it." I'm Brad Dison. Thanks for watching. And now you know the rest of the story.